None of us received. And have we had any notification to delegate authority to another member under the temporary standing order? Nope. Any declarations of interest, financial or otherwise? And feel free to make them as we go through if there is anything that occurs. First item on the first substantial item of the chairperson's business, the RHI Action Plan. You'll notice that the Minister published the RHI Action Plan and responses to the inquiry report on Friday. This is a very lengthy document with 19 appendices. It is very regrettable that this was not accompanied by an oral statement which would have allowed members to ask questions, and indeed I would imagine many members in the Assembly have many questions they would wish to ask. Of interest, the Action Plan refers to an overarching programme of NICS reform and a related memorandum of understanding to be agreed between the Department of Finance and the Executive Office. And I think we've asked several times to see that MOU, haven't we?
I'm not aware of that, Chairman.
Yeah, but I think, okay. We do need to see that. There's also a new NICS Code of Ethics with TUS for consideration. You may have not been be aware of it, but there is now a unified whistleblowing policy which may have been developed. It seems quite strange that the Northern Ireland Civil Service as a whole didn't have a unified whistleblowing policy, but now there's one being developed. And I think we might ask the question whether various departments had their own whistleblowing process, policy, but I think we need to do that as well. There are also going to be policy champions, which no doubt we would like to know who those policy champions are and who they report to. Speak up champions. I'm not quite sure what that is, but no doubt the Minister or somebody can come in and appraise us of that. Assessment and development centres, which will roll out commercial literacy amongst generalist staff. A project delivery unit. Departmental P3Os. Sorry, just remind me again what P3Os?
These are projects, programme, and there's another P, office, so they're about project management offices, I think is what they are.
Yeah. There's a sort of Northern Ireland Civil Service wide risk register of the 50 riskiest NICS projects, which has been produced, and this is an attachment at Annex E. I think I'd probably have to give apologies to members, but it's noteworthy that a number of the annexes don't either appear to make sense or they don't sit obviously with the RHI Action Plan. And I think we'll also note you'll have also seen from the correspondence, there were certain letters that went from a senior member of the Northern Ireland Civil Service to the RHI inquiry in 2018, and particularly in the annexes of that. And I think we can note from some of the annexes of that and some of the material that the Minister produced last Friday that there does indeed seems to have been a continuity between 2018 and 2021. I think we probably have a fairly legitimate question to ask is what people have been doing for 3 years, having identified those, because there doesn't seem to be a lot of difference from what the Minister was writing on Friday and what had been in fact written to the RHI inquiry in 2018. Members, are we content to supplement its recent invitation to the Minister a request that he briefs the committee on these important matters as soon as possible, as indeed he is the chair of the Executive Subcommittee on RHI Implementation and Reform? Are we agreed? Agreed. And also ask the Committee if content to revise the content of the planned briefing with the Head of Civil Service on the 17th of November in order to address these matters as well. Now, I'm still not sure where the responsibilities lie between the interim permanent secretary of our department, the head of the civil service, and the permanent secretary in the TEO. Now, Peter, correct me if I'm wrong, but within the TEO's office resides both the head of the civil service and the permanent secretary of TEO. Okay, right. We think that the head of the civil service is responsible for the delivery of the RHI implementations. Okay. I think it would be useful if we had an overview from, I'm trying to work out who we write to. Is it the head of the civil service or is it the permanent secretary? Well, let's ask the head of the civil service to explain whose responsibility for what, when who they're accountable to, and what are the sort of the timelines they're likely to do. because I am getting a bit confused in the bureaucracy. I know my background is simple sailor, but I'm not quite understanding where this all links up to. Would we be agreed to that, committee? Agreed? Okay, thank you. Next item of Chair's business, LCM Public Sector Pensions. The committee agreed its report on the legislative consent motion on the public sector's pensions and judicial offices bill last week. The report has been published on the committee's web page. Is the committee content to write to NIC ICTU thanking the union representatives for their evidence and advising them of the publication of this report? I think we'd be agreed to that. Agreed? Next item on the agenda, draft minutes of proceedings. Draft minutes of the Finance Committee meeting on the 6th of October at page 8. Are we agreed that this is an accurate record of proceedings? All those in favour say aye. Aye. Agreed. There are no matters arising. Is this agreed? Thank you. If we move on to the next item of the agenda, item number 6, financial reporting, departments and public bodies bill, departmental briefing. The committee will now receive an oral and written briefing from the department on the financial reporting bill. And I invite our good old friends, sorry, no, this is the wrong thing, I can't call you old, I'm not allowed to say things like that, but our good friends Jeff and Joanne, and welcome. Can you hear us okay? Jeff, can you hear us, Joanne?
Yes.
Yes,
okay.
I can hear you.
The following papers are relevant to the agenda item. Peter's briefing paper at page 18, departmental response in respect of the issues raised during the call for evidence at page 24, a copy of the consequential amendment on page 49, departmental correspondence on the review of financial processes at page 51, departmental correspondence on central funding matters at page 58, a copy of the raised paper at 66, and a further response to the committee queries is at the tabled items. Evidence session is to be reported in Hansard. Jeff, do you want to kick off?
Certainly. Thank you for this opportunity to further update the committee on this legislation and to provide a response to some of the queries raised during your consideration of the bill. As always, feel free to stop me at any time and ask any questions that you want. I understand that responses were received from 23 organisations, many of which indicated their support for the bill. A number of organisations raised concerns or questions or put forward suggested amendments which the committee have asked the department to provide commentary on. There were 8 issues listed in the committee's correspondence with the department, so I will take each of these points in turn. These issues are also covered in detail in our written responses. In relation to the Office of the Attorney General's concerns around being a public body which will be identified in the designation order as an NDPB, in the paperwork previously provided to the Finance Committee on the 10th of June, the Attorney General for Northern Ireland was listed as an independent office supported by TEO and not as an NDPB, and the table reflected that the Attorney General is currently within the boundary of TEO. Individual bodies will not be named within the bill itself. However, as for other bodies within the boundary, it would be the intention to include them on the annual designation order, to ensure that the order provides a full list of all bodies included within budgets, estimates and accounts. It will not be referred to as an NDP. The department feels that there is therefore no amendment necessary to the legislation on this particular issue.
Okay.
On the next issue, Northern Ireland Water indicated its response that it should not be included within a designation order. As it noted, it would not be the department's intention to designate NI Water at this time. A solution to achieve alignment in budgets, estimates and accounts for NI Water will further work and engagement as intended that this will be carried out as part of phase 2 of the project. The committee requested clarity in respect of whether NILGOS could be included in a future designation order.
Sorry, Jeff, you broke up there just slightly, but just to go back to Northern Ireland Water. We'll have been aware of the substantial amounts of public monies, quite rightly, of course, that have been transferred to Northern Ireland Water, particularly during this COVID period. And indeed, we've heard the Minister for Infrastructure in the Assembly make quite clear that she's looking for more funding. You'll also be aware of the considerable debate that's going on about the actual fairly unique is probably the wrong word to use, status of Northern Ireland Water as a GoCo, but not as a GoCo or whatever it happens to be. And again, you'll be fully aware that a lot of discussions both in the Fiscal Council and also the Fiscal Commission as well have been about some of the issues to do with sort of where Northern Ireland Water sits. So, is it the department's view that even though it's not a fully separate body. It's not mutualised status. It's not really a GoCo or whatever it happens to be. That it does not believe its accounting periods should be brought in line and sort of its process on budgets, estimates and accounts should be? Or is this Northern Ireland Water's opinion and the department has decided that it will bow to the opinion of Northern Ireland Water rather than trying to bring all our sort of financial reporting in line across the piece?
No, certainly it's the department's view rather than Northern Ireland Water's view. Northern Ireland Water is an NDP for budgeting and public expenditure purposes. However, for legal accounting purposes, it is a GoCo corporation. To find that, to be treated as a public corporation in budgets, it would need to be as more than 50% of its funding to be sales revenue. So obviously further work does need to be implemented to address this alignment of phase 2.
Okay. Thanks. Sorry, Jeff, keep going.
Moving on to NILGOS. The NILGOS committee administers the local government pension scheme. The committee itself is classified as an NDB of the Department for Communities. As such, the committee should be included in the designation order. In practice, admin costs are offset by income for the NILGOS committee in DFC's budget, but as there is no grant and aid paid by the department, nothing is currently reflected in estimates or. Therefore, under the review financial process, as an NDB, element of admin costs and income related to the NILGOS committee itself, which is currently within the budget, should also be included in the consolidated estimate in the DFD. This will achieve consistency in what is reflected in budgets, estimates, and accounts. The important point here is that there will be no impact on the treatment of the local government pension scheme itself, as it will remain outside of the departmental boundary. No amendment is necessary.
Okay.
The next issue concerns the clarity on the anticipated impact of government's arrangements for north-south bodies in respect of the bill. Again, it's important to stress that the bill will have no impact whatsoever on governance arrangements for north-south bodies. They will continue to be treated as analogous to NDPBs, Northern Ireland, semi-state body in the south. There will be no impact on their governance or control structures. The core aim of the bill is to allow for changes in estimates and to bring these publications into alignment with budget presentation. Under the current structure, the budget shows the northern proportion of the spend for north bodies, while the estimates and accounts the cash grant paid to the body by the northern department. Following the changes introduced by the bill, the spend will be allocated proportionately, and estimates and accounts will show the northern share of the spend of the body rather than the cash grant. This will have no impact on the operation of the body or how they are currently funded and the associated approval process. The change will be with a sponsor department and how they present the spend of the body. The Department of Public Expenditure and Reform were consulted during the early stage to advise them with coming changes to the presentation within the Northern Ireland publication, and NIPER did not raise any concerns or queries. The North-South Ministerial Council have also been updated on the project and the impact on North-South bodies. Directions issued by the department issued to the sponsor. Yes.
Jeff, just a very quick one. Does that mean that the reporting periods within the North-South bodies will be brought in line with the rest of those within sort of our departments?
The reporting periods will continue to be on the calendar year. What we will do is we will do an approximation for budget to ensure that approximate alignment on budget to our financial.
Right. Okay. Thanks. Keep on.
Yeah, so the directions issued by the department to sponsor departments in Northern Ireland will only pertain to the estimates and accounts of those sponsored departments. There will be no impact on the estimates or accounts of the southern sponsor departments.
Jeff,
or the individual North-South body.
Jeff, sorry, apologies. I think some of the members are having difficulty. You're breaking up a bit.
Right.
So we want to see if we can.
So maybe, Jeff, if you could log off and back on again. Sorry, members, it'll take a couple of minutes. And if you, when you come back on again, if you switch off Jabber, if you've got it on, and if you could just try to log off and back on, okay, and we'll just stand by our beds if that's okay.
Okay.
Sure.
Sorry about that, Jeff.
Sorry, members.
Answer can't pick it up.
Yeah, I think it's the members that are tuning in on Starleaf. They couldn't quite get. I mean, I'm struggling a wee bit as well with
All right, okay.
some of it. So, to be clear, I'm sure Hansard might be struggling too. So, if there's any new and complicated words you'd like to get into Hansard, this is a
No, it's
real
time to do it.
opportunity. You can think of any.
I have some of my learned friends could probably do that.
There we
And
go.
they're always saying how well Starleaf was working today as well. And my,
There he is. There he is.
but Jeff, give us a test count.
Hello, can you hear me okay now?
Seems to be.
Yeah. Sorry, keep going. Thanks.
Sure. Just moving on to the detail of the consequential amendment relation step. So details of that were sent to the committee on the 30th of September. Section 2(1)(c) of the Public Service Ombudsman Act, Northern Ireland 2015, states that the Ombudsman is not subject to the direction or control of a Northern Ireland department. But Section 2(2)(d) then states that this is subject to the power of the Department of Finance and Personnel to direct the form of accounts the Ombudsman must prepare. An amendment to the Public Service Ombudsman Act is therefore recommended to insert similar provision in relation to direct issues for S.
Sorry, Chair.
It will not affect the dependence of the
Go ahead.
body.
Sorry, just hold 1 second, Jeff.
It still is a wee bit in and out. It's a bit Norman Collier for that, who remembers that particular reference. It's a bit.
We having difficulty hearing.
Yeah.
Yes.
Jeff, is there somewhere else you could log on with your colleague that would be socially distanced?
I'll certainly try if you give me 1 minute.
No problem, sir.
Joanne, give us oh, you're at home, aren't you?
Yes, I'm at home actually, so
All right, sorry. I was going to suggest it to you, but all right. Yeah.
Assembly broadcasting.
Been reminded lots of times over the past 18 months of the comedy of Norman Collier, if anyone remembers.
Yeah, that would do. I'm surprised the member is old enough, chairperson, to remember that.
Yeah.
But I certainly am.
Maybe I'm not, but I was made aware of his stuff.
Those wasted years in civil service.
He says we don't work hard.
Boom, boom.
So maybe if Jeff switches off his camera when he comes back, that might help.
Yeah, we'll do that. See, we'll do that. So it was all going so swimmingly well in the IT world this morning. Honest. How much have we got in the way in correspondence? We got, sorry, 12, 14 minutes.
Not many items of correspondence.
Give Jeff another couple of minutes, but if not, we'll drop to the correspondence, crack through that, and then come
Okay.
back again. Where's the place that the Minister normally speaks to us from, and the Sue Gray used to speak to us from their boardroom at
Clare House?
yeah, Clare House? Oh, it used to work quite well.
Yeah, it was quite good.
Joanne, is Jeff in Clare House, I say, at the moment?
yes, I think he is actually.
If he's going to the conference room, he might try that.
Yeah.
Here we go.
Good. It's coming up. Good. Headset.
Yeah, Jeff, maybe if you switch your camera off as well, apparently that might help things too. So
Sure. A voice for radio.
Yeah, there we go, Jeff. Yeah, we're going to suggest you threw the Minister out of the conference room because we know that works.
I'll decline to comment there.
Right. Keep going.
Okay, so The next query that we're going to consider is the Northern Ireland Audit Office suggested that the bill could include a clause to prohibit a designation of a body that is funded from a consolidated fund other than the Northern Ireland Consolidated Fund. There is more detail in the written response provided, but in summary, the advice from OLC on the matter was that such a clause was not necessary within the bill. The purpose of the bill is to allow the Department to issue directions in relation to the departmental preparation of estimates. The bill requires consultation with the Treasury before designating a body. Any cross-funding of particular bodies should be highlighted at this stage. If it is still thought to be a problem that a body is designated, then the Department has the power to revoke its designation for that year. OLC were of the view that the combination of consultation with Her Majesty's Treasury and the power to revoke designation is sufficient. On this basis, a clause to prohibit designation of a body that is funded from a consolidated fund other than the Northern Ireland Consolidated Fund was not deemed necessary. Moving on to the Fiscal Council's comments on a lack of transparency with regards to EU funding and the use of net spending. Chair, as you will know all too well, in the formulation of a budget, there is often limited time between the finalisation of overall budgets for departments and the presentation of those budgets to the Assembly. This limited time period does not allow ministers to make final decisions around income based on their budget allocation, and therefore the budgets are presented on a net basis. Departmental estimates are provided slightly later in the financial process and do allow for decisions to have been made on income levels, and therefore allow departments to present financial data which includes income. The Fiscal Council make an important point about transparency of income, and whilst the estimate documentation does set out accruing resources for each area within a department, it may be possible to improve that presentation so that the sources are more clearly distinguished. The Department is of the view that this can be examined without recourse to amending the Financial Reporting Bill and are happy to examine this. We are indeed meeting the Fiscal Council to consider this issue and how to best present information. However, we are of the view that an amendment is not needed to the bill in this regard. And finally, turning to the Northern Ireland Assembly Commission.
Just talking about the Fiscal Council, because obviously one of the issues we have is that the Fiscal Council is not yet on a statutory basis, even though I think the Minister has indicated, though he doesn't have the time to do it this session, and I think it's just be the committee's view that we wish to see the Fiscal Council on a statutory basis. One of the issues I think we have to have within the bill is to make sure that the Fiscal Council's the guidance, and particularly on the reporting guidance that they require to ensure that they're able to fulfil their role as well. Are we looking in any way of adding anything into amending into the bill, as sort of the role and the requirement to report directly as required by the Fiscal Council, or is the intention is that to be left out, or is it something we might amend?
It's not our intention to include it within this bill. This bill is quite narrow in scope, and it may be something that could be brought in as part of the legislation that underpins the Fiscal Council itself. To my mind, it might be slightly more appropriate there. However, it's the committee's right to change the bill as they see fit.
Okay. Thanks, Jeff. Final one.
Yep, the final one is around Northern Ireland Assembly's Commission's suggested amendment to the bill to apply the same exemptions which relate to the Northern Ireland Audit Office to the Assembly Commission. The NIAO, the Audit Office, is exempted from the new power in the bill for DOF to direct how estimates are prepared, not because of its independence from departmental control, but because there is already other legislation in place that governs how it prepares estimates. The Audit Northern Ireland Order 1987 governs the preparation of an estimate, the preparation of accounts, and the scrutiny of accounts in relation to the Audit Office. Hence, there is already a similar exemption in relation to accounts of the Audit Office in Section 13 of the Government Resources and Accounts Act, affectionately known as GRANI. However, there is no additional primary legislation other than GRANI that governs the preparation of estimates or resource accounts by the Northern Ireland Assembly Commission. There is more detail in our written answer, but in our view, a power for DOF to direct the content or form of accounts and estimates of a body is not in relation to controlling the functions of the body, and so doesn't affect the independence of that body. As such, an exclusion from the new power to direct how estimates are prepared is not necessary in relation to the Assembly Commission. In addition, such an exemption could be misleading, in that it could give the impression that independence would be affected if no such exemption was specified, which is not the case. We are of the view that no amendment is required. In summary, whilst the numerous issues raised by the respondents are valid in their own ways, our assessment of those issues and the advice we have from OLC would conclude that no further amendments are required beyond the consequential amendment that the committee has already received. I trust this provides the committee with adequate clarity in the issues raised so far, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Thanks, Jeff. Cheers. Jim?
A couple of maybe fairly technical, but I think important enough points. The new estimates and budget bill will not set a limit on accruing resources, isn't that right?
The new estimate, the estimates and budget bill, there is an accruing resources amount that is included within.
It doesn't set a limit on it, does it?
It's not specifically my area. I'll have to come back to you on that one to make sure.
Because the new budget bills, as I understand it, will vote net resources. That's after the accruing resources have been taken, have been deducted. Isn't that right?
Yes, but there will be a presentation of the accruing resources within the associated documentation.
The point is, the estimates in the bill won't set a limit, as I read it, on the accruing resources.
I mean, I will have to get back to you on that one just to make sure that I'm right with what I'm saying.
If I'm right about that, here's the question. Under Section 8.1 of Granny, it says departments may, subject to any relevant limit set by a Budget Act, direct that resources accruing, etc. If there are no relevant limits any longer set by a Budget Act in respect of accruing resources, do you not need to tidy it up by taking out that phrase, subject to any relevant limits set by the Budget Act, by amending Section 8.1 of Granny?
That's something we can take away and have a look at.
Okay. The second point was, you are removing the need for a minute or direction to be laid in the Assembly, which again arises under Section 8 of Granny, after each budget bill listing the accruing resources which departments can receive and spend. So you're taking away the need for that direction. Westminster, when they reformed finance, these did things like this about 10 years ago. They didn't leave that. They dealt with it differently, didn't they? They replaced that with a listing the types of receipts in the estimates. I think it was part 1 of the estimates, which means that departments could only use the types of receipts listed. Was that not much more transparent way to do it? And why is Northern Ireland not doing the same thing in that regard?
Yeah, that is bound up, obviously, with that first issue, and we'll take that away and have a look at that for you, absolutely.
Do you understand the second point I'm making, yeah?
Yes.
You're not removing the need for a minute and direction to the Assembly. Westminster did remove that because they put into each estimate the types of receipts. They were listed, and that was obviously much more straightforward and transparent.
We'll certainly have a look at that, yes.
Okay, thanks.
Okay. Alicia? Oh, sorry.
Yeah,
I can't read your... Oh,
sorry,
yeah.
it's not right.
Couldn't read your writing upside down. Lisa?
He's muted, Stephen. No, it is. Still showing is muted here.
No, I have no question. I had my hand up whenever I couldn't hear earlier on. That's why my hand was raised.
Oh, so you just to confirm, Lisa, no question?
No question. Yeah.
Okay, thanks very much indeed. Thank you very much indeed. Any other members, any questions? Oh, sorry, Matthew.
Just on the, it would just be worth summarising, if you could, Jeff, what exactly the full view of the Fiscal Council on the financial reporting bill. Jim Alistair asked a couple of questions about accruing resources, which I think they raised, but what is the overall view of the Fiscal Council
So the Fiscal Council obviously want to understand what the overall income coming in from all areas looks like. So in the current estimates, we have the accruing resources set out there, but it's not in a way that it's along function lines as opposed to along where the funding comes from. So there may be a way in which we are able to present that information in a different way to allow them to allow people to understand where that income comes from as opposed to where it is going, which is this slight distinction as to how it's presented at the minute.
We're supposed to do that within, sorry, just a quick one, Matthew, just come across that. Jeff, aren't we supposed to be doing that in accordance with the OECD reporting process?
There's a number of things under the OECD reporting budgetary recommendations that we are having a look at the minute. One of, as I said, the issue that we have for some of the position on budget is that once a budget is agreed, there's a very short period of time before it is presented to the Assembly, so that's why it's done on a net basis at the minute. One of the things that we could look at would be the timing of that, but obviously we're restricted by the spending review and how the timing impacts on our local processes here. Had we more time throughout the year with a better timed spending review, we may be able to look at that more favourably, but at this moment in time our hands are somewhat tied by that Treasury timetable.
So,
sorry, Matthew.
Thanks. Can I just ask then, the Fiscal Council's point, that's their general point they've made about transparency of income, and indeed that's something the Fiscal Commission, I think, is looking at in terms of understanding, having a much clearer picture about the sources of income that the executive has. Is your position is not that you can do anything about this in the financial reporting bill? You're not seeking any amendments or suggesting any amendments to the financial reporting bill. You're saying that you're going to go away and look at it just in general.
So yes, we are going to look at the presentation of that as we do presentation of the accruing resources in the estimate. So we have the information on income in there, but it's not presented in the way that the Fiscal Council can see where the sources of income come from. So we're going to talk to them and have a discussion with them about how best we could present that to be as transparent as possible.
And when you mean, when we're talking about specific, I mean, we're talking about stuff as granular as parking charges and other, but there are other sources of small charges that are, that the department for, I would imagine, communities. Obviously, there is an income that comes from admissions to museums and arts venues, etc. And is that the level of granularity that you're going to be looking at? Obviously, I'm not necessarily by specific venue, but
yeah, I'm not sure that I will get into that level of granularity, but certainly the council raised issues on EU income, for instance, and not being able to see exactly what element of spend on, for instance, roads would be, related to EU income and what comes from developer contributions or something like that there, so I suspect we'll do a more general, wider EU income sources, and things like fees and charges would be wrapped up, rather than individually put out like you had sort of suggested there.
I was just giving an example of the kinds of fees and charges that exist, but those are the kinds of things where we have a very limited sense of, indeed, Chair, you were talking about this, a very limited sense of exactly how much is raised locally and where it's raised. Is that the kind of thing that the department would be, if others were to look at consequential amendments to the bill, is that the kind of thing the department would be up for discussing or welcome or open to engaging on in terms of amendments to this bill?
We at the minute are very much of the view that we can do this kind of transparency without need to adjust the bill for it. We think that there's a way through that will satisfy the requirements of the Fiscal Council and that kind of wider transparency issue without necessarily making amendments to the bill.
Okay, but obviously, of course, there's always the tension between putting something in legislation and, as it were, with respect to you, Jeff, and the department taking the department's word for it, having a legal obligation is that something the department, as so far as you're aware, would oppose?
I suspect that we would have some concern basically on the granularity of it and whether we would be able to provide that granularity at budget or at estimate time. It may impose a legal restriction that we actually can't commit to, and that's probably the one concern that I would have on that.
Okay, thank you.
Just Jeff, a quick one, just to expand slightly on Matthew's second. I mean, obviously the Fiscal Council had concerns about the sort of the EU funds coming in. So obviously maybe that was an area that they looked at because it was reasonably high profile, but found that they couldn't work out how it was being allocated through the system. Was that just one example that they took, or did they look at a wider section?
I'm not aware, Chair, of how widely they've looked at it, but I suspect it will be wider than EU income. Obviously, that's quite a headline issue to look at, but I suspect they will be looking to know what income comes from the likes of fees and charges, as opposed to coming from the EU or being provided through some other means. Yeah, so I suspect that whilst it's the headline issue, I think they're probably concerned on the transparency issue a wee bit more widely than that.
Okay. Any other questions for any members? Jeff, Joanne, usual, thank you very much indeed. Sorry, Jeff, we had sort of comms difficulties and all the rest of it, but it's hopefully we'll see you again soon in person. But thanks very much indeed, and thanks very much indeed for giving your answers to the committee. Thank you.
Thanks, Chair.
Okay. Now, Tim, we're going to go into closed session. Right, the red light is on. Moving back into open session. Our next item on the agenda is the October monitoring round, the written briefing. The committee is asked to consider at page 156 a copy of the department's submission to the October monitoring round. Members, do we have any questions in respect of the round?
Chair, I have a question at page 157. It says, due to the pandemic, rate relief was provided to all businesses for the first 4 months of 2021. A large number of larger retailers indicated they would repay this rate relief. 10.9 million was received in 2021 and repaid to the consolidated fund. Small sums are still being received by the department, and to date $500,000 has been repaid in this year. This will be declared as income and the associated budget surrendered to the centre. Now, in their earlier document, they raised the query of whether that money was lost to the department.
Jim, can I just bring sort of the clerk in on that one? We clarified that.
Yeah, we wrote to the department on that very question, Mr. Alistair. The department has just come back to me, so it's not actually in items. They've indicated that no, it was not lost to Northern Ireland. It's in Northern Ireland Consolidated Fund, so it didn't go back to Westminster. It was still.
But the clarification I wanted, that rates relief money was money from the Treasury that we were the postbox for, yes?
So we would have got unhypothecated COVID money
Yes.
in Northern Ireland,
Yes.
and some of which we chose, we the executive,
Yes.
chose to provide rates relief to all sorts of businesses, and the bigger retailers, some of whom did really well, volunteered to give some of it back. So that's where it's coming.
So though it was allocated by the Treasury for rates relief and was initially allocated as rates relief, when it was returned, it gets to be kept by the executive.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because it's still part of the overall
So
COVID.
did it not go into the consolidated fund again?
My understanding is, when the money came initially, it was COVID and it was unhypothecated, so it was
Yes.
up to the executive how they used it.
Yes.
They used it for rates relief. When it came back, it would have gone into the consolidated fund and could have been used for anything, is my understanding. Chair, does the committee want me to write to the department and just confirm that?
Well, I just wanted clarity. So that's a windfall, really,
I think so.
of,
Yeah.
of 10.9 million pound from the supermarket.
Last year and $500,000 this year so far, yes.
Yeah. I wonder what they'll squander that on. That's my bias.
Any others?
So,
Matthew?
it was just absolutely clear that 10.9 has not been lost. That's not.
Correct.
No, it's not lost.
Yeah.
Okay. Are we content to note the October monitoring round submission?
Okay.
Noted. Great. Moving on to correspondence. Correspondence index. Members to note 12 received items of correspondence from page 175. First item, Dormant Accounts Fund. Members are asked to note at page 178 an update on the Dormant Accounts Fund. The department reports that 57 projects have been funded and £5 million allocated, with around 16 million remaining in the fund. Are we content to note?
Yeah, the only query I had, there was a link which didn't work.
Yes, I couldn't get it to
You
work
could
either.
link on page 179 allegedly to the fund report, but I couldn't get that to work.
Yeah, Chairperson, I couldn't get it to work either. I will follow up and email that round to members.
Okay. Thank you. Next item, land registration fees. Members are asked to note at page 182 further correspondence from the department regarding the decision to not reduce land registration fees. The additional information shows the worst case scenario indicates that a fee surplus of 2.5 million. However, it suggested that the income estimates may prove to be substantially lower than the worst case scenario. Are we content to note?
No, yeah.
Noted. Next item, building control fees. Members are asked to note at page 216 correspondence from the department regarding the consultation on increases to building control fees by 17.5% in 22-23 and the same again in 23-24. So does that mean there's going to be a total increase of 35%?
They have to.
IMCAT can be seen in the annexes as page 231. The department is seeking views on the introduction of a user pays model where full fee recovery will be in use. The consultation is about to be launched. Are we content to note pending a briefing on the feedback from the consultation in due course?
Noted.
Okay. Next item, unique circumstances. Members asked to note at page 275 correspondence from the committee on DERA on unique circumstances funding. Are we content to note? Noted. National insurance consequentials. Members are asked to note at page 217 correspondence from the department regarding the level of Barnett consequentials associated with the increase in national insurance contributions. This is about when we were first told we were getting 400 million and then it migrated down to 300 million and the reasoning behind it. The department indicates that the figure is 300 million for the duration of the spending review, which would appear to suggest that the vaccine programme that will continue across the UK for this time. So it's my understanding that the excess money was being talked about. It's the long-term funding for the recurrent vaccine programme over the next 3 years. I think we could be content. I think we're content to write to the department and seek a breakdown of UK-wide spending if we wish. But I think that's an acceptable answer. We're agreed. Great. Next item, personal injury discount rate. Members are asked to note at page 278 correspondence from the Department's Committee for Justice regarding changes to the personal injury discount rate expected following the passage of the Damages Return on Investment Bill. The Department advises from 22-23 no additional funding will be provided by Treasury to offset pressures arising from the increase in the PIDR. Are we content to note? Noted. A year budget. Members asked to note at page 282 correspondence from the department regarding information relating to 3-year budgets. Are we content to note? Noted. 3-year budgets. Members asked to note on page 285 correspondence from the Committee on Agriculture regarding information related to 3-year budgets. Are we content to note? Noted. Next item, budget process. Members asked to note on page 286 correspondence from the Public Accounts Committee in respect of the Northern Ireland Audit Office report on the budget process. I think we're content to note that. Sorry, go ahead, Matt.
I'm sorry to go back a couple of items.
Which one?
To the 3-year budget setting process.
Sorry?
Just to raise a specific, reading the letter from Nadalo. It says, I can confirm the published draft and final budget 22-25 so that we had obviously asked about the 3-year budgets being shared. And on the 22-25, had we, is there something in that, does that imply that there will definitely be an overall executive 3-year budget, or is it simply a departmental, department by department exercise, or am I misunderstanding?
I think the expectation is it's going to be an executive budget,
Yeah.
where individual department budgets over the 3 years will be.
Yeah. But that's it. That's newly confirmed, no?
No, I think that's in hope rather than expectation.
But it's just interesting to come from the. But you see what I mean? I haven't seen. I'm not sure I've seen from the Department of Finance before the phrase budget 22, final budget 22 to 25. Have I?
I think, Chairperson, when you met with the interim permanent secretary, they advised departments had been asked to produce plans for those 3 years with cuts.
Yeah, 2, 5 and 8% efficiencies.
So they're working on the basis of there being a 3-year budget, and there will be an envelope will drop out of the spending review process at the end of October.
I don't think at any point. I mean, we knew that there was an exercise going on, but I don't think at any point. This is, unless this is the first time I've seen that written down by the department as a. Maybe I'm wrong. I'm not. It's. I just wanted to confirm if
I think
It's page 282.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think Matthew. I think there's an expectation that we're going to go to 3-year budgets. However, bearing in mind we're within 2 weeks of the actual spending review, where multi-year budgets are likely to figure in it. I think it would be. We could wait for the fortnight and then see.
No, I totally accept that, and that is my expectation. I just never had seen it written down before as an operating concept.
All right. Okay. Something that's also a bit more germane to us as well, sort of item number 11, fiscal council legislation. Correspondence from the Minister regarding the delay in the fiscal council legislation. Now, why he says it's unlikely in this term, I do note on his sort of first line on the second paragraph, I too recognise the importance of putting the council on a statutory footing as soon as we can, and appreciate the work the committee has undertaken to date considering this. Okay. Look, yeah, I think we're at one with the Minister, but we need to make sure that we keep the pressure on to make sure this fiscal council gets put on a statutory basis. I think every piece of evidence we've heard from wherever it happens to be shows that that's something we should be pushing for. Okay, are we content to note? Noted. Item number 12, RHI Action Plan. Members asked to note at page 291 a copy of the ministerial statement, including the executive response to the RHI Inquiry and Action Plan. We've discussed this earlier under Chairperson's business. The Clerk has circulated a short note in respect of the 19 related appendices and the lessons learned report. The committee has agreed to seek feedback on this from the Minister, from the Head of the Civil Service. Are therefore we content to note pending these briefings?
Yep.
Okay. And we will expect a sorted out set of appendices with information in it so we could actually know what we're reading about. Okay, thank you. Members are asked to note page 368 a copy of correspondence from the Chairperson's Liaisons Group to FM-DFM regarding the treatment of EU regulations. Are we content to note? Noted. And the composite request is page 371. Are we content to note? Agreed. We move swiftly on.
Well done.
Forward Work Programme. Draft Forward Work Programme is at page 386. It's understood that the Public Accounts Committee is to question Head of Civil Service on the nature of her new role and its meeting on the 9th of December 2021. The Committee for the Executive Office to do the same on the 3rd of November 2021. In order to avoid duplication, is the committee content to restrict its discussions with Head of Civil Service from the 17th of November to Civil Service Reform and RHI, and to write to the TEO accordingly? Is the committee content to revive its forward work programme accordingly as well? I think I'm okay. Agreed. And she chooses to answer anything else while we're here, all well and good. Are we content with the forward work programme as amended?
Yeah.
Thank you. Okay, any other business? None notified. Date and time of the next meeting, Wednesday the 22nd, or Wednesday the 20th here at 1400. I hereby adjourn the meeting.
Congratulations.
Is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed?